What if I told you that I was buried in over $300,000 of student loans? And what if I also told you that in less than 10 years later, that balance was zero? No lottery, no inheritance, just one decision that changed everything. I broke into cybersecurity, one of the fastest growing, highest paying, and most future-proof careers in the world. And here's the crazy part. I wasn't some tactical genius. I didn't have a big network. I didn't even have the perfect background. In the next few minutes, I'm gonna show you the exact path that I took and the mistakes that most people make when trying to escape debt, and the one shift that made all the difference. Now stick with me, because by the end of the video, you'll see how this same path is possible for you no matter where you're starting from. First, let me start off by clarifying, because I know long-term viewers of the channel, they might have heard me in the past say $200,000 in student debt. Well, I recently had a conversation with my dad, and he was like, wait, 200? He was like, no, son, you were at 300 at one point. I was like, really? And he was showing me the statements. If I can find them, I'll put them on the screen if I can get them from him. He's all the way over in America. I'm here in Thailand, so I'll see what I can do there. No, I was actually incorrect about that. It was $300,000 in student debt. First, I mean, let's address the elephant in the room. You might be wondering, how did you manage to rack up so much student debt? Well, I went to Penn State University, and if you know anything about Penn State and a lot of these large state schools, is that they will charge you double, like no joke, double tuition if you come from out of state. So I grew up in Tennessee, had a lot of family in Pennsylvania. That's why I decided to go to Penn State. And I was also a dumb 18-year-old that didn't know anything about signing your life away and student debt and things like that. So I ended up going to the school, and not only that, I took a summer semester, and here's the part, I changed my major my senior year. So it took me 5 years to graduate. So when you add all that up, that just keeps adding and adding and adding up. And eventually that got up to $300,000 across my multiple student loans that I had. The end result of all of that, all of that time, all of that money, is I end up having to start off in some uninspiring IT job making $58,000 a year. Look, I know that there's probably a lot of people watching this channel that they would love to be able to make $58,000. And I'm not saying that that's bad by any means, but with that much student debt, let's just say that, $58,000 is not ideal, even though it is not the worst in the world. So, and beyond that, I would say, like, just having so little career progression in that IT job that I was in. The team was great. I liked a lot of my team members and stuff, but outside of getting into management, which is something I never cared to do, there was not much progression opportunity there. So it really came down to this point where I knew I had to make a career change, and I was doing a lot of research on cybersecurity. I even wanted to do that since I was in college, and I knew people from my college that were majoring in that. I knew that I wanted to make the shift in there. I knew the salaries were so much higher. So what I end up doing is I end up going on the self-study journey. This is something that I started well before that IT job. I started doing self-study when I was in college, as soon as I changed my major, and actually a little bit before that. So in total, it took me 3 years of self-study in order to really build up the chops and build up the portfolio and everything that I needed in order to get the opportunity and make that jump over into cybersecurity, which that's something I'm super jealous about my students now, if I'm being honest, is I'm seeing my students now routinely get jobs within 6 months, whereas it took me 3 years to make that transition into the field. So I could have paid off my debt so much faster if I was able to do that myself. When I did land my first cybersecurity role as a pen tester, which is in offensive security, I was making $80,000 per year. Now, if you don't know what a pen tester is, essentially they're a cybersecurity professional that the company will hire to try to hack into them proactively, because there's how secure a company is on paper, and there's how secure they are in reality, and they want to make sure those two match. So they're going to hire a specialist that can try to proactively poke and prod into the stuff to see if those assumptions are correct. I never really stopped. Like, once I joined the field, in order to keep upping my salary, because I have some videos on this channel as well where I talk about how every couple years I was dramatically upping my salary, and then within like 3 to 4 years total in the field, I got my salary up to $200K per year. That was something that was possible because I was relentlessly upskilling myself outside of work hours and during downtime at work as well, because there were a lot of times where there was downtime, especially in my first job. But I didn't just kind of sit, twiddle my thumbs, and I don't know, like read League of Legends guides or whatever people were doing at work during that downtime, I was actually reinvesting that into my own education and learning. I was doing challenge labs. I was reading up on security issues and all kinds of stuff and just really min-maxing that amount of time. So the end result of that was 2 years later, I landed a government contractor job in the same role. So in the same pen testing offensive security role, now making from $80K a year up to $100K per year. And I'll show that on the screen right now as proof. And I honestly could have done this sooner than 2 years, but I was studying a lot of very random stuff back then. And that is, the whole concept of you don't know what you don't know. This is the reason that my students make progress at like 10x the speed of what I was able to achieve before. Now, I'm not going to sit here and paint this rose-colored, rose-tinted aspect of it and say everything was perfect and it was all uphill from there. I landed a job in cybersecurity, just kept making more money, and then the world was my oyster. There were definitely struggles along the way. A lot of that stem from just a lack of knowledge, a lack of understanding on things. The number one mistake that I made early on in my career is I was too frugal. I was too focused on frugality rather than actually building myself up to really min-max my progression and the amount of money that I could make. Actually, at the time that I landed that job at $100,000 a year, which was my second job in cybersecurity, when I started my cybersecurity company on the side where I was training and mentoring students to get into cybersecurity, and this YouTube channel and everything like that. And during that time, I continued to upskill myself. But that first year in business, I only made $25,000 from that, which is nice. A lot of people, watching this, you're probably hearing, wow, $25,000, I would love to have. And that is true, it is nice, but once again, it still is not groundbreaking considering I had like multi-six-figure student debt at the time, right? I say this to be like, even though I started this business, it's not like that was some like huge moneymaker, especially early on for me. It actually put a very small dent, barely even put a dent into the student debt that I had, especially in that first year of business. I will say in pursuing that business, I learned so many important lessons especially from top business owners, because business owners have some of the best mindsets out of any people that you're going to come across, because they've been through all the hardships, especially if there's someone that's successful in business, they have a lot of wisdom to pass on. And I would say the number one mindset shift that I got from those business owners, and this is the thing that really was the biggest impact on my progression, was that mindset shift of going from being super frugal to aggressively reinvesting my money back into my education. And really, this is what pushed me to expand outside of just those random cheap courses and trainings that I was doing early on into actually being able to then get my next role, which I'll go into in a minute, which was a huge jump in my earning potential. I want to tie back to a video game. I know a lot of people that are into cybersecurity are also into gaming as well. Have any of you guys played StarCraft? If you don't know, StarCraft is an RTS. It's a real-time strategy game. And the basic premise behind it is, you can play in a team environment, but the standard game mode is one-on-one. So you have, a base and a bunch of workers. You just start with a bunch of workers that are gathering resources, and you spend those resources on like military units and different units, and then you march across the map and go try to destroy your opponent's base. Well, in StarCraft, in the very beginning of the game, if you guys have played it before, probably the first time you played it, you're really bad, because it's a really difficult game, to be honest. If you have ever played that game and you just try to sit on one base and you're playing against someone who knows what they're doing, and let's say you sit on one base and you're like, okay, I am going to build some army units off this one base and march over and try to take him out. And then you go over there and you're like, oh man, he has like 10 times the army that I have. Why? Well, the reason is that in the beginning of the game, your opponent that knew what he was doing, he wasn't just, hoarding his resources. He wasn't saving his resources. He was aggressively spending his resources on more workers in order to grow his economy faster. He was fast expanding into a second or even third base. So now he has like 10 times, 20 times the resources that you have. So then when he shifts his focus into building his army, he's just going to be able to build a massive army compared to what you can build. Now, another analogy with StarCraft, right, is it's also bad to hoard resources. It's bad to have a very high mineral count or a very high gas count and not use it, because that means that that is potential that is being unused. You could be utilizing the minerals and the gas that you have to put into, more workers, more, units, whatever it is, and that would make you a lot more powerful. You're weak, actually, if you have a bunch of resources that are unspent. I think there's a lot of parallels between that and self-improvement, cybersecurity, and any kind of skill that you really want to grow if it's an important skill to you. And so the end result of this mindset shift, I was able to go from that 100K a year job to a 166K job in just 1 year. And when I'm talking about these numbers, in the past, people have said, oh, that's because he was selling cybersecurity. It's like, no. I'm only talking about my 9-to-5 job. I'm not even mentioning, like I said, the first year in business, if we want to talk about the cybersecurity company, it was 25K. After that, the year after that, which was when I was already working this 166K per year job, then my business was making into the six figures. I was able to get to 166 just from, making this one jump from this job to the next, Fortune 500 company that I was working at. What made it even better than that was then a year and a half later, through pay bumps and just being a top performer at that company, I was able to bring my salary from 166 up to close to $200,000 a year. And that's not even counting the restricted stock units that I had, bonuses as well on top of it. And I'll show you as proof on screen right now, because I know a lot of people are skeptical about this, especially in today's, internet economy and stuff where anyone can make any claims. So I'll put that on the screen right now. You can also check my LinkedIn as well if you want to verify any of this information. So this was coinciding with that additional 6 figures in my cybersecurity company as well, which I'll show proof on that on screen right now. So both of these were coinciding, and that's what really allowed me to knock out pretty much, all of this debt. Like I said, to this day, my debt count is now at 0. So if you need to escape debt as quickly as possible, cybersecurity is one of the best vehicles for that. So watch the video on screen right now where I will show you exactly how you can make $500,000 in just 1 year with cybersecurity.